we're also starting a Watching Brief channel on YouTube.
Hmm.
So in addition to liking and subscribing to Archaeosoup, please like and subscribe to the Watching Brief on YouTube.
Yeah. Hello and welcome back to Watching Brief for the week of the 7th of October. It is now mid-October, if you can't tell already by the background here at Archaeosoup Towers. I'm very much looking forward to Halloween. And I am joined as ever by my co-host, Mr. Andy Brockman, who has, I put gremlins into my office this week. You've been fighting gremlins for the past week and a bit, haven't you? It sounds like the internet, even though it's our glorious nation's capital, has been letting you down.
Basically, we had no broadband at home for most of last week.
Yeah.
And then just this afternoon, for some reason, we're late starting because my laptop decided to forget everything it had ever learned about our Wi-Fi network. So what we want
to be fair, you don't want the Wi-Fi to remember much about your internet history, do you? I mean,
I'm sure there's some bot in St. Petersburg that knows all about my internet history. But anyway,
he's on all these Spitfire forums correcting people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
exactly.
Actually,
yes.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah. No, what I was going to say was it's good to be back, and we have some news updates, don't we? But actually, for once, not about archaeology, about the Watching Brief itself.
Yeah. Well, we've taken. Really, actually, this summer has been an interesting one for archaeological news. It's been simultaneously slow but also eventful, and we have been in a bit of a news lull internationally, as we that is to say, archaeological news lull, as we approach what's going to be probably the event of the year, for better or worse. A certain TV series being released on Netflix, yeah. Hancock and Balls, yeah. And
Hancock and Ball, yeah.
Hancock and Ball story. And so we took advantage of that lull just to have a wee bit of a think about, in particular, how and where Watching Brief exists, and also what that effectively communicates about how we think and how we'd like the world of archaeological news to work. And this begins, I think, with Elon Musk walking into that headquarters building for Twitter carrying a porcelain sink a wee while ago now. Let that sink in. Terrible. And it's only got worse from there. It went from bad wordplay to statements of being free speech absolutist and thinking that it's a good idea to let everyone back onto a platform if they want to come back onto
including
it.
Nazis.
And
racists.
And others. Yes. Do you know, there is a certain defensibility there, in so much as you can defend that people have a right to hang themselves with a rope, in terms of social media and free speech. However, it's become more and more clear that being essentially non-political, as he's called himself in the past, and being someone who just wants the best for humanity, Musk has seemingly built for himself the world's largest and most expensive social media bubble. He has massively inflated his presence on the website artificially, so you cannot not see what he's tweeting at any given time, and it's resulted in, I think, for himself, quite an unhealthy atmosphere. And the reason why I'm saying this is that I don't know the man. We don't know Elon Musk, but we can see where he's going and what he's doing at the moment. And he's clearly not living up to that apolitical free speech absolutism that he seemingly thought he could. I'm not sure that he necessarily thinks he is anymore, actually.
I don't think he ever did.
No, well, maybe he didn't, but he certainly said it at one point. And with that, lots of first of all, lots of people who just wanted a pleasant atmosphere on Twitter departed. Over the months, more and more brands and companies started to shift to other platforms such as Threads.
Well, there was a reason for that. Of course, it was Musk said that if people didn't want to advertise with him, they could go fuck themselves.
Well,
which
yes,
is typical of his approach to it sort of burn the house down.
yeah, sort of genius level CEOing there.
Absolutely, yeah. Galaxy brain. I mean, you've got to admire the man.
Yeah, apparently. But then also beyond that, actually, the people who we follow, the people who we work with or have an interest in what they have to say about archaeology, the archaeological world, the context of archaeology, and that is a geopolitical context often. Journalists who work for major news outlets and so on and so forth have bit by bit moved away from Twitter with a hanging head, with a sorrowful brow, and all the rest of it. They've regretted the fact and what has happened to that platform. But it's become kind of unusable for ironically enough, for open and accessible conversation without weird and extreme ideas coming forward. So, for example, yesterday, actually, Musk announced that he's going to allow people who are sort of premium users of the site to earn more money if they start talking to each other. You shouldn't have to bribe people to talk to each other on a social network, should you? I think
there's a very good reason for that.
It's a damning state of affairs.
It's a damning state of affairs. And I think there's a very good reason for it. He is desperate for cash because since he bought the site, and what everyone agreed was an inflated price anyway, he tried to back out of the deal and was forced to go ahead with it. So it's his own fault. And then it's become even more his own fault because it's hemorrhaged cash ever since, and it's now worth something like, I think, between a quarter and a fifth of what it was worth when he bought it. Basically, it's been tanking, and you could argue that that it's unfortunate. Twitter was a fantastic resource. It was a brilliant brand. It was incredibly useful for all sorts of reasons, but particularly for live breaking news and also for an opportunity for people who wouldn't normally meet each other to talk to each other.
Well, and actually that early on, I remember, was one of the scary but also exciting things about Twitter was that it wasn't a curated list of people who you were tweeting at or posting to. So previously, Facebook was the place where I remember joining Facebook back when it was university only access. Actually, when I was a student, and the fact that you basically for the most part were
Mark Zuckerberg's dating site.
Well, yeah, it's grown a bit beyond that, but the point is, you were talking to your friends, and you were talking to people for the most part who maybe friends of friends. But on Twitter, there was this initially, kind of intimidating prospect that anyone can find you, and initially, I was a bit concerned by that. I thought, well, what if? Surely anything I put out there, someone's not going to like it. And this is true, but also it had this remarkable potential, which bore fruit, to highlight niche opinions, unfolding events, perspectives on things that perhaps were appearing live on news channels, but perspectives that people were able to carry in their hand, literally via their phone, and of course, social media in general has empowered people to do that more generally. But Twitter was a way, because of that format, because actually, funnily enough, it was already a place where you weren't being funneled necessarily to see certain people. That random things could be discovered, and this is one of the reasons why so many journalists, so many public figures, and frankly governments, politicians, for example, still used technically, but used for a long time Twitter as a place where even key announcements would be made. So it was I don't know. It was approaching something akin to being a journal of record, wasn't it? And something like the Times of the internet.
Certainly. I think it's ironic that recently, we every so often, if you're still on X Twitter, you see a banner which talks about Twitter, the world's marketplace, and it tries to get you to sign up to the premium, the world's town square, to use the American term, and try to get you to sign up to the premium level, which allegedly you can monetize. In fact, it's still very difficult to monetize unless you're a sort of mega user, and the kind of users that Musk has allowed to promote in that area are the ones who are the most unscrupulous about what they actually put out there. Which is one of the reasons we are taking the steps that we've decided to take regarding the watching brief. But yeah, I mean, it is, I think, a cause for infinite regret that somebody so inept has taken charge of something that was potentially so useful globally. Actually,
useful is a good word. I wouldn't say it was always a pleasant place to be.
No, it never was. It never was entirely that. There were always, and hence the block feature, which again, Mr. Musk has decided he's going to play around with, so that people can't actually block people anymore. It's because free speech is so absolute that even when people produce, sort of anti-Semitic or Islamophobic or whatever sewage, you can't actually block it from appearing on your feed.
Yes, but also as well, let's. We can go around in circles talking about this forever. But for example, I saw an experiment a couple of weeks ago where someone created a new Twitter account, attempted to just be interested in Pokemon. They weren't interested in politics, just Pokemon, and they were being recommended Musk and
Elon's feed. Elon Musk and Trump at Truth Social.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so
they were.
Yeah. But so the point is, yes, we are we as Watching Brief in that sense are moving away from Twitter. We'll probably still have a presence there to observe. But for example, I actually shut down the Archaeosoup, I think at Mr. Soup or Mr. Archaeosoup Twitter account months ago now. I do still have an anonymous presence on Twitter again, just for because there is still some remnant of newsworthiness there. But Watching Brief from here on will actually have, technically it never really was its own account on Twitter. It was sort of us posting there. But now it's going to have and does have an account on Bluesky. We had briefly, as so many other people did, consider Threads and Mastodon, and for various reasons, not least again because of where some of the people who we want to follow and be in touch with have gone, we've gone to Bluesky. So the link for that will be in the video description below. Please do follow us there. We'll be sharing every new and also probably some archived Watching Brief episodes there. In addition to an aspect that we'll expand on in a moment in terms of why it's not part of this second aspect of Watching Brief housekeeping. But in addition to essentially a curated news feed, I think for a long time we've tried to bring you things to keep an eye on, sometimes as a list of news articles that starts out at like, oh, we'll just put that in as 3 minutes at the beginning of the episode, and ends up being a 20-minute conversation about 5 news stories.
Usually my fault.
I'm not pointing any fingers. What's the point of that phrase in the context of 2 people? It often ends up being that for because of one of us having a particular interest in something, but also as well, we both have shied away from over the years regurgitation. So doing what's called journalism on in terms of newspaper websites and sometimes even printed newspapers, where you essentially gather and have a feed of news which is of a certain topic that people can rely on as being topical, but it's also just more or less copied and pasted. It's not really actually original editorialization or original journalism or investigation. So we sometimes have, but have never really wanted to properly engage with having a one for one. Here's what someone else has written. Let us read it for you.
We always wanted to try and bring something fresh to a topic. If we saw a topic that was interesting, we said, okay, what can we bring to this that somebody else isn't?
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. And so, despite that, though, I've always liked seeing, especially for archaeological news, there's often a new discovery, an interesting pot that suggests something new about the economy of a local area in Roman times, for example. If we were to highlight that in the show, it would be read a highlight or a headline, and then maybe recount the first paragraph, and then maybe add some bit of trivia on the end. That's not what we wanted to do. So instead, what we'll do is on Bluesky, we'll post, or probably I will post, links to those sorts of news stories as and when they turn up, because I think it's going to be useful to have a curated place of things that we recommend and that we find interesting, but also that we don't want to be forcing that into the watching brief format. And that this is where the second big aspect of our housekeeping comes in, and it's to do with how we have been conceiving of the episodes that we produce for you. These weekly, for the most part, weekly episodes of Watching Brief tend to have a format where we will put together an agenda sheet. We'll have a sense of roughly what we want to talk about, roughly in what order, but we haven't really formally separated them out into chunks, or what we have come to call during our discussions modules, almost, of insertable content or topics or focuses.
Jenga blocks.
Yeah, Jenga blocks, exactly, yeah. And so, for example, one of those is actually a way of tackling another issue that's definitely been weighing on my mind for a while now, in addition to how we talk about just random topical news, how we include what used to be called the Muppet of the Month. The Muppet of the Month is a feature that lots of you at home are very fond of, and I know that when we sort of started to shy away from them because of the new weekly format, because obviously when you're doing a weekly broadcast, you can't really talk about the month yet at any given point, and there have been a couple of Muppets who have sort of broken through their sheer force of Muppetry. Quite impressive. But but for the most part, we have been struggling to actually find a way of fitting that in. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to have, instead of, and this is something that really you won't notice, I don't think, as a viewer, but I think it's useful for us to know that you know what we're doing. And that is that we're going to have things, essentially.
Don't pull the curtain back. We're not supposed to see the wizard's a wizened old man.
But for example, a module which is to do with something, a news piece, a news article, maybe something that we've researched or something that we bring to you, or that we have editorial things to say on, would be a type of module. Another one would be, for example, guest speakers. If we want to sort of slot that in to an episode, then we can and will do that. And finally, yes, things like, for example, the Muppetry. Although actually we've come to call that a different name, haven't we? I'm just checking in on our notes here. We have decided to rebrand these Muppetry segments as the Heritage Halfwit. And therefore it's no longer tied to a monthly or a weekly or even a daily cycle. Who knows how often half-wits will turn up. They frequently turn up in little chunks of 2 or 3 at a time, don't they? But yeah, Heritage Half-Wit, I think, is going to be one of these new modules that we'll be putting in. In addition to that, we I do want to continue having separate episodes for what we've been calling unstratified entertainment. So talking about movies and drama shows, different forms of media, basically, perhaps documentaries, perhaps even computer games. So unstratified entertainment will be continuing. And in addition to that, we're also thinking of doing for Patreon, after show debriefs. Basically, we did start doing that. I think earlier this year, if not at the end of 2023. But again, because we weren't formally thinking in these chunks, it became kind of hard to maintain. Oddly enough, so really, again, this is all about really us in terms of our heads, our joint head. And how we think about doing watching briefs, so that you guys get more of what you love and have loved about watching brief. So, I mean, I'm quite excited about that. I'm quite pleased that we're moving on from, not moving on. We found a way to move on from Muppet of the Month to having a Heritage Half-Wit. And that could also lead to having formal award ceremonies for Heritage Half-Wittery, couldn't it?
It could, and in fact, for a number of years now, we've been talking about doing media awards, and that may resurrect itself in the forthcoming media season. I mean, there's certainly going to be at least one candidate we alluded to earlier for best archaeological documentary series. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
No, in all seriousness, I think the other thing we need to say is that one of the things we're trying to do, and we've been talking a lot and reading around a lot and looking a lot at what other people are doing in the blog sphere, in the podcast sphere, in social media. We alluded to, we talked about the fact that we've chosen to move away from ex-Twitter. Certainly, as long as as Mr. Musk is the proprietor, and his algorithm conquers all, and we're asking you really to join us on a journey. And the place we want to end up is a common room, a group of people, a community who have in common an interest in, however detailed, professional, lay interest in heritage and archaeology, and an interest in how we tell those stories and what formats we use to tell those stories. And so we've talked about the Bluesky feed, which will be really the starting point for our Watching Brief community. Join us on Bluesky, follow the Watching Brief on Bluesky. That feed on Bluesky will take you to places, heritage and archaeology places that we hope you'll find interesting, and you'll be able to interact with us too by commenting really easily on what we're bringing to you. And we are also, initially, at least in parallel with the feed on Archaeosoup, the strand on Archaeosoup, the Archaeosoup website, we're also starting a Watching Brief channel on YouTube. So in addition to liking and subscribing to Archaeosoup, please like and subscribe to the Watching Brief on YouTube.
Yeah.
Because that is another way that we can, and recommend it to your friends, your colleagues, your your peers, your families, your dog, cat, whatever, because that's the way that we can begin to combat the curse of the algorithm and the curse of one of the biggest problems that anybody in social media has at the moment is getting noticed. We think we've got things that deserve to be noticed, that we can say things, we can have conversations that need to be, people want to participate in, and so on. And so accessing Bluesky, accessing the channels on YouTube are a way to get those conversations going, get those conversations seen and responded to. Even if you disagree vehemently, take part.
Yeah, and just to be clear on that, it's going to be at least a year before we potentially transition to just publishing Watching Brief on the Watching Brief channel, and that is going to be based purely on stats.
Numbers.
Yeah. So if
it's a brutal business.
It is a brutal business, but basically, if we don't reach, broadly speaking, 1,000 subscribers and a certain view count, then we will continue to publish the videos on both Archaeosoup and on Watching Brief, because clearly, we want these videos to be seen. And on the one hand, Archaeosoup has a wonderful established place within the algorithm, but also it'd be interesting. I think we both think it'll be interesting to see if Watching Brief can establish its own focused archaeological news place within the algorithm. That means that we're serving people's expectations in a focused way over on Watching Brief, and I can continue to do the various things that go into the soup over on Archaeosoup. But again, that all comes down to you. So for now, if you could watch on Archaeosoup and Watching Brief, or at the very least watch on Archaeosoup and subscribe on Watching Brief, then that would be fantastic, because it's going to be an interesting and frankly a little bit scary transition, because the moment you consciously try and do something to the cold, dark, black hole that is the YouTube algorithm as created by Google and Alphabet, weird things can happen. So I'm aware of this, and I'm aware that we need to go in a sensible and measured way. But I'm also intrigued, by this possibility, because it'd be fantastic to have I guess a focused form of recognition on that digital footprint. And I mean, we could talk about brand recognition, etc., if we wanted to, but I think particularly when it comes to what you guys are being recommended and why, this could be an interesting experiment. So we shall see. I think that's it really for this show. Is there anything else that you want to add, Andy?
Not really. Just to say again, join us over on Bluesky. Like and subscribe to the Watching Brief.
Again, also will be
linked
both
below. Archaeosoup. Subscribe to Archaeosoup and to the Watching Brief separately, and stick with us. And basically, tell us what you think. Tell us what you want to hear about. Tip us off about stories that you think we should be covering. Remembering that we want to primarily break new stories or bring new angles to old stories. And we can take it from there. Yeah.
Okay. That's it. Thank you so much for watching, guys. As ever, until next time, do take care, and do consider supporting us on Patreon. Do check out Andy's Ko-fi account, and also as well check out the Watching Brief badge pin selection on Etsy, which again also will soon have an additional design available. But
if we're not stopped by the authorities.
Yes, yeah, exactly. If we're not,
if they issue a D notice, we're not even going to be able to tell people that we have something so important.
Yeah. So if we're not black bagged,
absolutely,
absolutely. All right, guys. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.